So Nick Diaz was in attendance at UFC 261. Is he going to finally make a return to the octagon? My name is Rahul J. Chan. This is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. So look, man, Nick Diaz has been talking about making a comeback for years, literally years. And I feel like Nick Diaz and his team made a concerted effort to make a comeback when they did the sit-down interview with Ariel Helwani, which was at the back end of 2019. And that interview itself got a lot of coverage, and it had a lot of people in the MMA world passing a judgment or opinion on Nick Diaz's mind state and whether it's the right thing for him to do, whether a return to the octagon is the right thing for him to do. At the time, I personally made a reaction video to that interview, and it's one of my most viewed videos ever, because I just basically said in that interview, and I haven't gone back and watched it, but from memory, I basically said, just chill out, relax. Like, when have you ever seen Nick Diaz give a coherent interview? He's a guy that openly admits he finds the whole interview setting awkward. He's not a fan of doing interviews, and he often kind of goes off on a tangent when answering a question, gets lost in his thoughts and just spurts out the first thing that comes to mind. And yes, during that interview, he did look like he was intoxicated in some way, but we're sitting here saying, oh, this guy can't fight. He was drunk during an interview. Like, look what they do for a living. They get in a cage in a pair of shorts and fight another man for all of us, for all of our entertainment. Like, what a crazy way to make a living. Personally, I feel like he has every right to fight again if that's what he wants to do. Like, he hasn't had a fight. I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page now. He hasn't had a fight since 2015. 6 years. And I'm just thinking that 6 years ago was the last time we saw Nick Diaz fight. That's kind of blown my mind a little bit, because time flies, doesn't it? It doesn't feel, for me, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it has. And in that whole period, like, I mean, obviously he's had, you know, periods of training, he's had spurts of training, and then he's had, you know, long periods of partying, but he hasn't taken the kind of damage a common fighter would take in that period, because he hasn't been active. And if we live in a world where, you know, Mike Tyson is lauded for making a return to the ring, we live in a world where Oscar De La Hoya, actually, this is quite, there's a couple of parallels here, because he's recently announced that he's coming back to the ring, and he also was incoherent and intoxicated the last time he was had a mic shoved in front of his face. I'm about to sneeze, but I'm going to try and hold it in and soldier on. Yeah, we live in a world where Oscar De La Hoya was in a similar sort of situation in terms of being intoxicated when he had a mic shoved in his face, but he's making a comeback. But Nick Diaz isn't in that boat, man. He's not in that boat, and I'm not saying that he's in his prime. Yes, he's 37 years old, so we don't know what we're going to get in terms of a Nick Diaz, like what version of Nick Diaz we're going to get when he comes back. But judging off his recent posts on social media, like, he looks to be in tremendous shape. DC was tweeting about how I've just seen Nick Diaz and he's strong. I don't know whether that means they got into some sort of grappling match in a hotel or something like that. But DC was talking about Nick Diaz. Dana White was asked about Nick Diaz in the post-fight presser, and he said that he's going to sit down with Nick Diaz and discuss with him what he wants to do next. For me, the only kind of hurdle or stumbling block is, who is Nick Diaz gonna fight if he is to come back, and what are Nick Diaz's expectations? Because when he left, for me personally, and I feel like I'm not far off the truth by saying this, Nick Diaz was a needle mover back in 2015. He's a guy that you could sell a pay-per-view off the back of his name. I'm not sure whether that's the case now. Personally, for me, it is, but I don't know whether I'm in the minority or the majority in that. Also, I don't know who Nick Diaz would come back and fight with, because it's a little bit awkward at the moment, because he's always been a welterweight, and when he was active, his brother was a lightweight. Now his brother's that guy in the welterweight division. He's come and booked a fight against a top welterweight, and I don't believe that Nick Diaz should be coming back and fighting a top 5 170 pounder. I feel like Nick Diaz should be coming back and fighting someone that has a level of name value that might be on the other side of the peak of their powers. And the name that I keep thinking about, and I don't even know if this guy still fights or whether he's retired, but I think Donald Cerrone would be a very good opponent for Nick Diaz. I don't know what Nick Diaz's expectations are in terms of what he thinks he should be getting paid. I feel like in his mind, he probably thinks that he's still that guy, and he has every right to still think that he is that guy, because when he left, he was that guy. And the circumstances in which he stopped fighting under, when he got that stupid lengthy ban for testing positive for marijuana, which now if he was to be tested under the laws and rules now, he would never have got banned now, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? So the laws have changed. So in theory, he did nothing wrong. But look, we are where we are. I just don't know whether he believes that he is a guy that should be headlining a pay-per-view and should be getting paid millions and millions of dollars. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. What I'm saying is there a gap between his expectations and what the UFC are willing to pay him? Like, this is an age-old story in terms of the UFC saying what they believe is the value of a fighter, and the fighter believing that value is underneath what they think they deserve. Potentially what might happen, again, I'm just speculating, is if the UFC and Nick Diaz can't come to an agreement in terms of what they believe should be the purse for a Nick Diaz return, or whether they can't come to an agreement of what they believe should be the right opponent for a Nick Diaz return, will the UFC just release Nick Diaz? They've done it with Rumble Johnson. They've done it with Yoel Romero. Tyron Woodley apparently has just been released. Will they release Nick Diaz? And if he does get released, he's had a previous relationship with Scott Coker, and I'm sure that's a conversation Scott Coker would be willing to have with Nick Diaz about booking him in a fight at Bellator. But there's loads of moving pieces at the moment, and all I can express is my desire to see Nick Diaz back in the octagon. I want to see him fight again, and I feel like Donald Cerrone would be a good opponent and a good barometer to see where Nick Diaz is at in terms of his capabilities as a fighter, in terms of where he is in terms of his mind state. And also it's a name. It's a name that we're all familiar with as fans of the sport. And it's not like we're not just throwing Nick Diaz to the wolves, you know. It's a fight where if Nick Diaz wins, then we can say, you know what, he does deserve to be here. Let's see what else he's got left. Let's see who else he can fight. And if he loses, then it's definitely the right opponent to say, you know what, it's a shame that Nick Diaz hasn't fought for the 6 years, but I think we've seen the best of him. That's my thoughts. That's my opinion on a Nick Diaz return. What do you guys think? What do you think about Nick Diaz making a return? Do you think he should? Do you think he shouldn't? If he does come back, who do you think he should fight? Let me know. Put your comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this with a friend if you've enjoyed it. And I'll catch you guys next time.